The rain hammered against the windshield as Emma Chen pedaled her bicycle through the darkening streets of Manhattan. Her backpack, stuffed with textbooks and her laptop, weighed heavily on her shoulders. She was already late for her shift at the campus library, and the storm had turned the evening commute into a nightmare. She shouldn't have taken the shortcut through the financial district, but desperation made people do stupid things. Emma was 3 months behind on her tuition, living on ramen noodles and black coffee, working 2 jobs while maintaining a 4.0 GPA. At 22, she felt ancient, exhausted, and utterly alone in this city of millions. The traffic light ahead blinked yellow. Emma pedaled harder, water splashing up from the puddles, soaking through her worn sneakers. She could make it. She had to make it. She didn't see the black Bugatti until it was too late. The screech of tires pierced through the sound of rain. Emma's bicycle slammed into the passenger side of the luxury vehicle with a sickening crunch. She flew over the handlebars, landing hard on the wet pavement. Pain exploded through her shoulder and hip as her backpack scattered its contents across the street. For a moment she lay there, stunned, watching her textbooks absorb the rainwater like expensive sponges. Then the car door opened. The man who emerged looked like he'd stepped out of a cologne advertisement. Tall, easily 6'3", with sharp cheekbones and eyes so dark they appeared black in the dim streetlight. His charcoal suit probably cost more than Emma's entire year of tuition. He didn't rush to help her. Instead, he stood there assessing the damage to his vehicle with an expression of cold fury. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" His voice was deep, cultured, with the faintest trace of a British accent. Emma scrambled to her feet, ignoring the throbbing in her shoulder. "I'm so sorry. I didn't see you. The light was yellow and I thought, you thought you could run a red light on a bicycle and somehow survive in this city." He crouched down, running his fingers over a scratch on the glossy black paint. "This is a Bugatti La Voiture Noire, one of only 10 in existence." Emma's stomach dropped. She didn't know much about cars, but even she had heard of Bugatti. How much?" "The car is worth $18 million. This panel alone will cost approximately $200,000 to repair and repaint to factory specifications." The world tilted. $200,000. She didn't have $200 in her bank account. Emma's knees nearly buckled. I can't, clearly." He stood towering over her and pulled out his phone. "I'm calling the police. You'll be cited for reckless driving and your insurance, assuming you have any, will cover the damages." "I don't have insurance." The words came out as a whisper. "I can barely afford rent. I'm a student. I work 2 jobs just to eat." Something flickered in his dark eyes. Interest, perhaps, or calculation. "Then you'll be sued. Garnished wages for the next several decades. Bankruptcy at 20-something. What a promising start to life." Tears burned Emma's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not in front of this cold, heartless stranger who probably spent more on watches than she'd earn in her lifetime. "Please, there has to be another way. I can pay you back in installments. I'll get a 3rd job."
Do you have any idea how long it would take you to pay back $200,000 working minimum wage jobs?"
He studied her with unsettling intensity. "Approximately 37 years, accounting for interest and your basic cost of living." Emma's hands trembled as she gathered her soaked textbooks. Everything was falling apart. Her scholarship, her dreams of becoming a pediatric surgeon, her entire future. Destroyed because of one moment of desperation in the rain. "However," he said slowly, and Emma's head snapped up. "I might have an alternative proposition." Hope flared in her chest. "Anything. I'll do anything." A ghost of a smile touched his lips, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Be careful making such promises to strangers. My name is Damien Cross. I'm the CEO of Cross Global Enterprises. I need someone for a particular position. 1 month of your time living in my penthouse, available whenever I require your services. Do that and I'll consider your debt paid." Emma's mind raced. Living in his penthouse? Available whenever he required? It sounded like the setup to a horrible situation. But what choice did she have? Prison? Bankruptcy? Watching her dreams die? "What kind of services?" she asked carefully. "Nothing illegal," he assured her, though something predatory gleamed in his eyes. "You'll sign a contract. Full room and board. After 30 days you walk away debt-free." The rain continued to fall and Emma stood at a crossroads. She thought of her textbooks, her dreams, her mother's sacrifices to give her a better life. She thought of the alternative, legal battles she couldn't afford. A future crushed before it began. "I'll do it," she said. Damien Cross smiled then, and Emma couldn't shake the feeling she'd just made a deal with the devil himself. The Cross Global Enterprises building pierced the Manhattan skyline like a blade of dark glass. Emma stood in the marble lobby, still damp from the rain, clutching her salvaged textbooks and feeling utterly out of place among the sleek professionals who glided past in their designer clothes. Damien had given her a business card and an appointment time, 8 a.m. the following morning. She'd spent the entire night researching him, discovering he was even more powerful than she'd imagined. At 35, he'd built a tech and real estate empire worth billions. He was notoriously private, never photographed with women, and known for his ruthless business tactics. The tabloids called him the Ice King of Wall Street. Now, standing in his territory, Emma wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake. "Miss Chen?" A woman in a crisp gray suit approached. "Mr. Cross is ready for you. Follow me." The elevator rose so smoothly Emma barely felt the movement. They ascended to the top floor, where the doors opened directly into a penthouse office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Damien stood at the glass, his back to her, phone pressed to his ear. "I don't care about the minister's concerns," he said coldly. "Either the zoning approval comes through by Friday, or I'll ensure his corruption investigation moves forward. Your choice." He ended the call and turned. "Miss Chen, punctual, I appreciate that." He gestured to a chair across from his desk. As Emma sat, she noticed a document waiting, easily 50 pages, dense with legal text. "Your contract," Damien said, settling into his own chair with predatory grace. "I suggest you read every word before signing." Emma pulled the document closer. The terms were specific and bizarre. She would live in his penthouse for exactly 30 days. She would be available from 6 p.m. to midnight every evening and all day on weekends. She would accompany him to business dinners, social events, and private meetings. She would wear clothing he provided. She would not question his instructions. In exchange, her debt would be erased and she'd receive $50,000. "This sounds like you're buying an escort," Emma said bluntly. Damien's lips curved slightly. "I'm buying your time and discretion. What I'm not buying is sex. That clause is on page 12. No physical intimacy is required or expected. If I violate that term, you can terminate immediately and still receive full payment." Emma flipped to page 12. The clause was there, ironclad and clear. "Then what do you want from me?" He leaned back, steepling his fingers. "I need someone pure and innocent seeming for a specific business negotiation. I'm acquiring a company owned by a very traditional family. They've refused my offers because they see me as a ruthless corporate raider, which admittedly I am. But if I appear to be in a committed relationship with someone wholesome, someone earnest and genuine, it changes their perception. You want me to pretend to be your girlfriend? I want you to be yourself, a hardworking student, kind, authentic. I'll provide the context. You simply exist beside me and don't contradict whatever story I tell." His dark eyes studied her intently. "I researched you last night, Emma. Full scholarship to Columbia. Volunteer work at children's hospitals. Your professors call you compassionate and brilliant. You're exactly what I need." The idea of being studied, investigated made her skin prickle. "And after 30 days, you return to your life. I complete my acquisition. We never see each other again." He slid a pen across the desk. "Unless you'd prefer decades of debt?" Emma read through the contract again, more carefully. The terms were generous, almost too generous. But the clause about no physical intimacy was clear, and there was even a provision allowing her to record interactions if she felt threatened. Damien Cross might be ruthless, but apparently he was also careful about liability. "I'll need to keep attending my classes," she said. Already addressed. Clause 18. You may attend all scheduled classes and study between the hours of 8 a.m. and 5 p.m., and I can leave any time if you violate the terms. With full payment and a legally binding NDA that protects your reputation. I'm not interested in ruining lives, Miss Chen, just in closing business deals. Emma picked up the pen. Her hand trembled slightly as she signed each page. This was insane. 30 days with a billionaire stranger, playing pretend girlfriend, living in his penthouse. But it was also a lifeline. $50,000 would cover her tuition, her debts, and give her breathing room to focus on school. When she finished, Damien signed his own copy with swift efficiency. My driver will collect you and your belongings tonight at 6. Pack light. I'll provide everything you need. Tonight? Emma's eyes widened. The acquisition meetings begin this week. We need time to establish a believable dynamic. He stood, clearly dismissing her. One more thing, Miss Chen. In public, you'll call me Damien. In private, you'll address me as Mr. Cross. It maintains appropriate boundaries. Boundaries, Emma repeated, standing. Right. Because this whole situation isn't already crossing about 100 boundaries. For the first time, genuine amusement flickered across his face. I'm beginning to see why your professors appreciate your honesty. It's refreshing. He walked her to the elevator. 6 p.m., don't be late. I hate waiting. As the elevator doors closed, Emma caught her reflection in the polished metal. She looked terrified. What had she gotten herself into? At 6 p.m. precisely, a Blacktown car pulled up to her shabby apartment building. The driver, a stoic man in his 50s, helped her load her 2 suitcases, everything she owned in the world. As they drove through Manhattan toward the exclusive Upper East Side, Emma watched her old life disappear behind her. The penthouse occupied the entire top floor of a building overlooking Central Park. When Emma stepped inside, her breath caught. Floor-to-ceiling windows, minimalist furniture that probably cost more than cars, art on the walls that looked like it belonged in museums. Your room. Damien appeared from somewhere, gesturing to a hallway. First door. You'll find appropriate clothing in the closet. We have dinner at 8 with the first family member I'm courting for the deal. Wear the blue dress. Emma found her room larger than her entire previous apartment. The closet was already filled with dresses, casual wear, even pajamas, all in her exact size. The blue dress was elegant but modest. Probably designer, though she didn't recognize the label. When she emerged at 7:50, Damien was waiting in the living room, devastating in a black suit. His eyes traveled over her slowly, analytically. You'll do, he said. But you look terrified. These people are traditional, but they're not monsters. Just smile, be yourself, and let me handle the business talk. I'm not terrified, Emma lied. Damien stepped closer and she caught the scent of expensive cologne. You're trembling. First rule, Miss Chen, never lie to me. I always know. Their eyes met and Emma felt something electric pass between them. This was going to be the longest month of her life. The first week passed in a blur of expensive restaurants and carefully orchestrated encounters. Emma played her role perfectly, the sweet, studious girlfriend who softened the Ice King's hard edges. The traditional family Damien was courting, the Winstons, seemed charmed by her. Mrs. Winston especially took to Emma, praising her dedication to medicine and wholesome values. What surprised Emma was how naturally the act came. Damien was attentive in public, holding doors, his hand at the small of her back, asking about her classes with apparent genuine interest. In private, he maintained perfect distance. True to his contract, he never touched her inappropriately, never entered her room without knocking, never made her uncomfortable. But something was shifting. Emma noticed how his eyes lingered on her when he thought she wasn't looking. How his jaw tightened when other men approached her at events. How his hand would flex slightly before he touched her in public, as if restraining himself. And Emma, despite her better judgment, found herself noticing everything about him. The way he rolled his sleeves up when working late, how he took his coffee, black, no sugar, 3 cups before noon. The rare, genuine smile that transformed his cold features into something almost warm. She was in dangerous territory. On the 8th night, everything changed. Emma woke at 2 a.m. to sounds from the living room, glass shattering, low cursing. She pulled on her robe and ventured out to find Damien standing among the remains of what looked like a very expensive whiskey bottle. He was still in his dress shirt and pants from dinner, tie loosened, looking more undone than she'd ever seen him. Mr. Cross, she said softly, his head snapped up. Go back to bed, Miss Chen. But Emma saw the blood. Your hand. You're hurt. I said, go back. She ignored him, grabbing the first aid kit she'd noticed in the kitchen. When she returned, Damien was sitting on the couch looking resigned. Emma knelt before him, carefully taking his hand in hers. Glass had sliced his palm, not deep but bleeding steadily. What happened? She asked, cleaning the wound with gentle efficiency. Her medical training kicked in automatically. The Winston deal is falling apart, he said quietly. The son found out about some aggressive tactics I used against a competitor years ago. He's convinced his father I'm not someone they want involved with the family business. Emma focused on bandaging his hand, aware of how close they were, how his eyes were fixed on her face. Is it true? What he found? Yes, I destroyed a company that stood in my way. Put 200 people out of work. His voice was flat. I'm not a good man, Emma. You should remember that. It was the first time he'd used her first name in private. Something about the moment felt intimate, dangerous. People aren't just one thing, Emma said, finishing the bandage. You're ruthless in business, but you haven't broken a single promise to me. You've been nothing but respectful. She looked up, meeting his dark eyes. That counts for something. Damien stared at her, something raw and hungry flickering across his face. His free hand rose slowly, cupping her cheek. Emma's breath caught. This was crossing the line, violating the contract, but she didn't pull away. Do you know what I discovered this week? He murmured. You're 22 years old and you've never been kissed. Never been touched. Too busy studying, working, surviving. Emma's heart hammered. How did you... Your roommate mentioned it at the charity gala. She thought it was charming. His thumb traced her lower lip. I can't stop thinking about it. Can't stop imagining what it would be like to be your first. To teach you, corrupt you, ruin you for anyone else. The contract says... Emma's voice came out breathless. I know what it says. I wrote it specifically to prevent this. He leaned closer, his breath warm against her lips. Tell me to stop, Emma. Remind me that I'm your employer and you're only here because I'm essentially blackmailing you. Tell me this is wrong. But Emma didn't say anything. She'd spent her whole life being careful, responsible, doing the right thing. And where had it gotten her? Living on ramen, drowning in debt, utterly alone. Maybe it was time to do something reckless. She closed the distance between them. The kiss was electric. Damien's hand slid into her hair, tilting her head back as he took control. His lips were demanding, possessive, nothing gentle about it. Emma had no experience, no idea what to do, but instinct took over. She kissed him back with all the pent-up loneliness and hunger she'd been suppressing for years. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Damien rested his forehead against hers. This complicates everything. Then maybe we should stop, Emma whispered even as her hands clutched his shirt. We should. He kissed her again, deeper this time. We absolutely should, but they didn't stop. Damien pulled her onto his lap, and Emma gasped at the intimate contact, feeling his arousal against her. His hands roamed her back, her sides, stopping just short of inappropriate while somehow making her burn. I want you, he said against her neck. I've wanted you since you looked up at me in that rain, defiant even while terrified. But I won't take advantage of the power dynamic here. Emma pulled back, looking into his eyes. What if I want this too? What if I'm tired of being the good girl who never takes risks? Then we renegotiate the contract tomorrow. Clear terms, clear consent, with you free to walk away anytime. He kissed her forehead with surprising tenderness. But not tonight. Not when you've been crying in your sleep because you miss your mother. Not when I'm your employer and you're vulnerable. When this happens, if it happens, it needs to be your free choice. The restraint in his voice, the visible struggle for control, made Emma want him even more. But he was right. As much as she desired him in this moment, she needed to be certain it wasn't just Stockholm Syndrome or misplaced gratitude. Tomorrow, she agreed. Damien helped her stand, keeping his hands respectfully on her shoulders. Go to bed, Emma, and lock your door. Because my self-control is hanging by a thread and I don't trust myself around you right now. Emma fled to her room, heart racing, lips still tingling from his kisses. She touched her mouth, still tasting him, and knew nothing would ever be the same. The next morning, she found a new contract on the kitchen counter with a note in Damien's sharp handwriting. Read carefully. Sign only if this is truly what you want. No pressure, no judgment either way. The new contract was shorter, simpler. It made their relationship personal rather than professional. Gave her more money, more freedom, and explicit consent clauses for physical intimacy. At the bottom, a final note. You have 3 days to decide. Until then, we maintain the original boundaries. I'll be staying at my office to give you space. Emma's hands trembled as she held the paper. This was real. Damien Cross, the Ice King of Wall Street, wanted her. Not just for show, not just for business, he wanted her. And Emma, who'd never taken a risk in her life, had 3 days to decide if she was brave enough to take the biggest one yet. Emma spent 3 days in turmoil. She attended her classes in a daze, consulted with her few trusted friends, and researched everything she could about relationships with significant power imbalances. The more she learned, the more confused she became. Every article warned against exactly what she was considering. But every time she remembered Damien's kiss, his restraint, his insistence on her free choice, her doubts wavered. On the third evening, she found him in his home office. He'd been true to his word, staying away, giving her space. But now he looked up from his laptop, and the hunger in his eyes nearly undid her. "I've decided," Emma said, placing the signed contract on his desk. Damien stood slowly, coming around the desk but maintaining distance. "You're sure?" "Absolutely certain. Because once we cross this line, I won't be able to uncross it." Instead of answering, Emma closed the distance between them and kissed him. This time she took the initiative, and Damien's control shattered. He backed her against the desk, his hands everywhere, his mouth claiming hers with bruising intensity. "Wait," he gasped, pulling back. "I need to hear you say it. Explicit consent. Tell me what you want." Emma met his eyes, her own desire reflected back at her. "I want you to teach me everything. I want to stop being afraid of living. I want you, Damien Cross, with full knowledge of who you are and what this is." Something primal flashed in his dark eyes. "This isn't going to be gentle. I've wanted you too long, and I'm not a patient man." "I don't want gentle," Emma breathed. "I'm tired of everyone treating me like I'm fragile." Damien lifted her onto the desk with effortless strength, standing between her legs. "You're innocent, Emma. That means I need to be careful whether you want me to or not." His hands slid up her thighs, stopping at the hem of her dress. "But I promise to make you feel things you've never imagined." The next hours were a revelation. Damien made good on his promise, introducing Emma to pleasure with patient intensity. He mapped every inch of her body, learning what made her gasp, what made her moan, pushing her to the edge again and again before finally allowing her release. When he finally made her fully his, he watched her face with an intensity that made Emma feel utterly seen, utterly possessed. Afterward, lying tangled together in his massive bed, Emma traced patterns on his chest. "I thought you'd be cold. Everyone calls you the Ice King." Damien's hand stroked through her hair. "I am cold. Ask anyone who's negotiated against me." "But you," he tilted her face up. "You make me want to be different, better. It's terrifying." "Why terrifying?" "Because wanting something gives it power over you." He kissed her forehead. "And I've built my entire life on never wanting anything I can't control or acquire." Emma understood what he wasn't saying. He couldn't control or acquire her feelings. Couldn't guarantee she wouldn't leave. Couldn't protect himself from the vulnerability of caring. It made him more human, less the untouchable billionaire. The following week, everything intensified. Damien was insatiable, and Emma discovered a passionate side of herself she'd never known existed. But they also fell into a routine. Breakfast together, studying while he worked, dinners where they actually talked. Emma learned about his childhood in boarding schools, his driven climb to success, the loneliness at the top. Damien learned about her dreams of pediatric surgery, her mother's sacrifices, her fears of never being good enough. The Winston deal, surprisingly, came back to life. Mrs. Winston invited them to a family dinner, and Emma went with growing confidence. She was no longer playing a role. She genuinely cared about Damien, and it showed. But during dinner, Emma overheard a conversation that changed everything. She'd excused herself to the restroom and was returning when she heard Damien's voice from the study, door slightly ajar. "The girl is perfect for this," he was saying. "Winston's eating out of my hand now. Another week, maybe 2, and the deal closes. And then what?" Another man's voice, his lawyer perhaps. "You end it with her?" That was the plan. 30 days, remember? Though I've extended it for the acquisition timeline. Papers rustled. "I'll give her the agreed payment plus a bonus. She'll go back to her life. I'll have the company. Everyone wins." "You don't sound convinced." A long pause. "She's gotten under my skin. But that doesn't change reality. I'm not relationship material, and she's got her whole life ahead of her. Clean break is best." Emma's blood turned cold. She'd been an idiot. The new contract, the passion, the intimate conversations, all of it was just an extension of the original deal. She was still an employee, still bought and paid for, just with better benefits. The Ice King hadn't melted. He'd simply found a more effective business strategy. She slipped back to the dining room, finished the dinner with a perfect smile, and said nothing. But that night, when Damien reached for her, she feigned exhaustion. She needed time to think. By morning, she'd made her decision. The original 30 days were almost up. She could leave, take the money, return to her life. She'd been a fool to think a man like Damien Cross could actually fall for someone like her. He'd been clear from the beginning. This was a transaction. But Emma had changed in these weeks. She wasn't the same frightened girl who'd crashed into his car. She'd discovered strength, confidence, desire. She'd learned she deserved more than crumbs of affection from a man who saw her as a means to an end. So she made a plan. She would finish the deal, help him close the Winston acquisition because she'd signed a contract and she honored her commitments. But then she would walk away with her head high, her dignity intact, and never look back. What Emma didn't know was that Damien had his own revelation that night. Lying alone in his bed, her scent still on his sheets, he realized with stunning clarity that he'd fallen in love with her. The realization terrified him. He'd never been in love, never wanted to be. Love was weakness, vulnerability, loss of control, but Emma made him want to be weak. Made him want to wake up beside her every morning. Made him want to deserve her. The problem was he'd already ruined it. He'd framed their relationship as a business deal, paid her for her time, treated her like an asset to be acquired. How could he tell her now that it had become real for him? That every kiss, every touch, every shared confidence had bound him to her more tightly than any contract? Both of them, lying in separate rooms, came to the same conclusion. It was too late. They'd crossed too many lines, mixed business with pleasure, built something beautiful on a foundation of coercion and commerce. The question was whether either of them was brave enough to fight for something real, or if they'd both walk away from the best thing that had ever happened to either of them. The Winston deal closed on day 28. Damien acquired the company in a merger that made headlines. At the celebration dinner, Emma played her role perfectly one last time, smiling for the cameras, congratulating Mrs. Winston on welcoming Damien into the family business. "You've changed him," Mrs. Winston confided to Emma. "I've never seen Damien so human, so happy. You're good for him, dear." Emma's heart cracked a little more. If only the older woman knew the truth, that Emma had been paid to seem good for him, that every smile and touch had been part of a calculated business strategy. That night, back at the penthouse, Emma packed her belongings. Tomorrow was day 30. The contract was complete. She'd take her money and disappear before things got messier. She didn't hear Damien enter her room until he spoke. "You're leaving." Emma turned. He stood in the doorway, still in his tuxedo from dinner, looking devastated. "The contract is complete," she said quietly. "You got what you wanted. The Winston acquisition closed. I fulfilled my end. What if I don't want you to go? Then you should have thought of that before you told your lawyer I was just a business strategy that got under your skin." Emma zipped her suitcase. "I heard you, Damien. In Winston's study. I know this was all just an extended transaction for you." Damien's face went pale. "Emma, it's fine. I went into this with eyes open. I just forgot for a while that contracts don't become love stories." She faced him. "Thank you for the money, the experience, and the lessons. I'll be a stronger person because of this, but I won't be your convenient girlfriend anymore." "What if I love you?" The words hung in the air. Emma wanted desperately to believe them, but she'd learned her lesson.
"People like you don't fall in love, Damien."
You acquire things. You win deals. You strategize. But love? She shook her head. That would require vulnerability you don't have. She walked past him, suitcase in hand, leaving Damien Cross alone in a penthouse that suddenly felt empty. For the first time in his life, the Ice King had lost something he couldn't buy back. The only question was whether he'd let her go or fight for her. Emma moved into a modest studio apartment near campus, courtesy of the money from her contract with Damien. For 2 weeks, she threw herself into her studies with manic intensity, trying to forget the taste of his kisses, the sound of his rare laugh, the way he'd looked at her like she was the only thing in his world that mattered. It didn't work. Everything reminded her of him. Coffee in the morning, the city skyline at night, even her medical textbooks because he'd bought her new editions after noticing her old ones were falling apart. She was in the hospital library studying for her biochemistry final when her phone buzzed. An unknown number. She almost ignored it, then answered on instinct. "Miss Chen?" An unfamiliar woman's voice. This is Rebecca Winters, Damien Cross's personal attorney. I need you to come to New York Presbyterian Hospital immediately. Mr. Cross has been in an accident. Emma's blood turned to ice. What kind of accident? He's alive, but he's been asking for you repeatedly. Please come. Emma ran. She ran like her life depended on it, grabbing a cab, her heart hammering against her ribs. All her anger, all her hurt evaporated in the face of one terrifying reality. Damien might die, and she'd never told him the truth. That despite everything, despite the contract and the payment and the calculated nature of how they'd begun, she'd fallen completely irrevocably in love with him. At the hospital, Rebecca Winters met her, a sharp woman in her 50s who looked Emma up and down critically. You're her, the one who broke him. Broke him? Emma's hands trembled. What happened? Car accident. He ran a red light 2 nights ago, wrapped his Bugatti, a different one, around a pole. Broken ribs, concussion, internal bleeding they managed to stop. Rebecca's expression softened slightly. But he keeps calling your name. Won't rest. The doctors say his stress levels are dangerous. They asked me to find you. Emma's vision blurred with tears. Where is he? Room 407, but Miss Chen? Rebecca caught her arm. I've worked for Damien Cross for 15 years. I've never seen him vulnerable. Never seen him care about anything beyond his next acquisition. Until you. She released Emma's arm. Whatever happened between you two, he's in love with you. I'd stake my career on it. Emma didn't wait for more. She found room 407, pushed open the door, and stopped cold. Damien lay in the hospital bed, looking nothing like the powerful billionaire who dominated boardrooms and her body with equal skill. He looked broken, pale with bandages visible beneath his hospital gown. His eyes were closed, but his lips moved, whispering something. Emma stepped closer and heard her name. Emma, I'm sorry. Emma, I'm here, she whispered, taking his uninjured hand. His eyes opened, unfocused at first, then sharpening with recognition and something that looked like relief. You came? Of course I came, you idiot. Tears streamed down her face. What were you thinking, running a red light? A ghost of a smile seemed appropriate. Poetic justice for how we met. He winced, pain flashing across his face. Emma, I need to tell you something. In case I don't get another chance, you'll have plenty of chances. The doctor said you'll be fine. Let me say it anyway. He squeezed her hand weakly. I love you. I've been in love with you since about day 5, when you spent 2 hours explaining pediatric cardiology to me because I asked, and you forgot I was supposed to be intimidating. You just lit up talking about saving children's lives, and I realized I'd never met anyone who cared about anything as much as you care about healing people. Emma's breath caught. But I heard you tell your lawyer I was lying to him and myself. Damien's thumb traced circles on her hand. I told him what I thought I was supposed to feel. That I was still in control, still following the plan. But the truth is, you terrified me. You made me want things I'd spent my whole life avoiding. Commitment, vulnerability. A future that didn't revolve around acquisition and control. Why didn't you tell me? Because I thought you could do better. He laughed bitterly, then winced again. You're brilliant, compassionate, full of light and hope. I've ruined lives to build my empire. I've destroyed competitors, manipulated markets, and done things I'm not proud of. What could I possibly offer someone like you except corruption? Emma climbed carefully onto the bed beside him, mindful of his injuries. You're wrong about yourself. Yes, you've been ruthless, but you've also been kind to me. Patient when you didn't have to be. You respected my boundaries, insisted on my consent, and gave me the space to choose freely even when you clearly wanted me. That's not corruption, Damien. That's decency. I paid you to spend time with me, and then you renegotiated. You gave me options. You could have taken advantage 100 different ways, but you didn't. She touched his face gently. Do you know what I learned about you in those 30 days? You're not the Ice King. You're just someone who learned early that showing warmth meant getting hurt. So you built walls so high no one could climb them. Until you crashed into my car, he murmured. Until I crashed into your car, she agreed, and destroyed both our carefully controlled lives. Damien's hand came up to cup her face. I have a proposition for you, Miss Chen. Another contract? She asked warily. No contract. No payment. No terms and conditions. His dark eyes held hers. Just a question. Will you give me a chance to court you properly? Dates, flowers, meeting your family, the whole traditional romance. Let me prove I can be more than a business transaction. Emma's heart soared even as she tried to maintain composure. I don't know. I'm very busy with medical school. I have finals coming up. My schedule is packed. I'll work around your schedule. I'll study with you. I'll quiz you on anatomy. His smile was soft, hopeful. I'll do whatever it takes, Emma. Because I finally understand what I've been missing my whole life. It wasn't another $1 billion or another company acquired. It was you. It was always you. You're very persuasive, Emma said, her own smile breaking through. Must be that ruthless businessman training. Say yes, Emma, put me out of my misery. She leaned down carefully, kissing him with infinite gentleness. Yes, on one condition. Anything. No more running red lights. I can't afford another billionaire's car, and I definitely can't afford to lose you. Damien pulled her closer despite his injuries. Deal. Though I should mention I never fixed the first car. The one you actually hit. I had it put in storage exactly as it was the night we met. Why? Because that's the night my life actually started. He kissed her again. Everything before you was just preparation. Building an empire so I'd have something to offer when you came along and wrecked me in the best possible way. That's possibly the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me, Emma murmured. Though it's also the only romantic thing anyone's ever said to me, so the bar was low. I'll raise that bar, Damien promised. Give me a lifetime and I'll make sure you know every day exactly how loved you are. Emma settled carefully against him, listening to his heartbeat, steady and strong. A lifetime sounds perfect, but let's start with getting you healed, and maybe after that we can discuss what comes next. What comes next is I marry you, Damien said matter-of-factly, probably after you graduate. I'll plan the proposal carefully, something meaningful, not just expensive. Maybe at the children's hospital where you volunteer. Then a wedding where I promise in front of everyone that I'll spend the rest of my life earning the gift of your love. You're getting ahead of yourself. I'm a planner. It's what I do. He kissed the top of her head, but I can be patient when it matters, and you matter more than anything. A nurse came in to check vitals, giving them a knowing smile. Mr. Cross, your stress levels are finally normal. Whatever this young lady said must have helped. After the nurse left, Emma turned to Damien. So tell me, the Winston deal. Was any of what we had real? Or was I really just a business strategy? It started as strategy, he admitted. I won't lie to you, Emma. That's not who we're going to be. But somewhere around day 7, when you fell asleep on my couch with your textbooks and drooled on my custom leather, it became real. By day 15, when you argued with me about ethical investing and made me actually reconsider my approach, I was completely gone. I did not drool on your couch. You absolutely did. I took a picture. He pulled up his phone with his good hand, showing her the photo. Emma passed out across his couch, mouth open, surrounded by medical texts. She looked exhausted and peaceful and completely unguarded. You kept that? I keep every photo I've ever taken of you. He scrolled through his phone, showing dozens of candid shots. Emma laughing at dinner. Emma concentrating on her studies. Emma looking out at the city skyline with wonder in her eyes. See, completely obsessed. Possibly unhealthy levels of obsessed. Emma laughed through her tears. I have photos of you too, sleeping at your desk, making that face when you're frustrated with a business call, smiling at me like I'm the only person in the world. We're both hopeless, Damien concluded. Completely, Emma agreed. They stayed like that for hours, talking about everything, their fears, their dreams, their plans for a future neither had expected to want. Damien told her about his childhood loneliness, his drive to succeed as a way to prove his worth. Emma told him about watching her mother work 3 jobs, about her own fear of never being good enough. You're more than good enough, Damien said fiercely. You're extraordinary, and I'm going to spend every day reminding you of that. Even when I'm exhausted from residency and probably snippy, especially then, I'll bring you coffee and food and quiz you on medical terminology. And when you're stressed about business deals and being difficult, you'll call me on my bullshit like you always do and remind me what actually matters. He kissed her hand. We'll figure it out together, all of it. Because that's what people who love each other do. Emma's phone buzzed. A text from her mother who she'd told about the hospital visit. Is he the one? Emma looked at Damien. Broken, bandaged, but looking at her like she hung the moon. She typed back, yes, he's the one. What did your mother say? Damien asked. She wants to meet you. Fair warning, she's protective and will probably interrogate you about your intentions. My intentions are to love her daughter for the rest of my life, support her medical career, and eventually give her grandchildren if Emma wants them. He paused. Too much? Definitely too much for a first meeting, Emma laughed. But we'll work on your social skills, see? Already making me a better person. As the sun set over Manhattan, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Emma realized something. She'd started this journey terrified, broke, and alone, crashing into a stranger's car and thinking her life was over. Instead, that collision had led her here to love, to growth, to a future brighter than anything she'd imagined. Sometimes the worst moments of your life, she reflected, turned out to be the beginning of the best ones. Sometimes running a red light didn't end in disaster. It ended in exactly where you were supposed to be all along. I love you, she whispered to Damien. I love you too, he whispered back. My beautiful disaster. My perfect collision, my Emma. And in that hospital room, as the city lights began to twinkle outside, two people who'd started as strangers bound by a contract became something much more important. A partnership built on honesty, respect, and love that neither had seen coming. The Ice King had melted. The Virgin Girl had found her voice, and both of them had discovered that the best deals in life weren't negotiated. They were surrendered to, with open hearts and brave faith in the unknown. 3 years later, Dr. Emma Cross, née Chen, would finish her residency in pediatric cardiology at the same hospital where Damien had his accident. Damien would shift his business focus to ethical investments and philanthropic ventures, with Emma as his conscience and partner. They would marry in a small ceremony at the Children's Hospital, surrounded by tiny patients in wheelchairs who served as flower girls and ring bearers. And every year on the anniversary of their first meeting, they would visit the storage facility where Damien kept the damaged Bugatti, a reminder that the most beautiful things in life often began with collisions, crashes, and moments of pure chaos that led to perfect clarity. But that was the future. For now, in this moment, it was enough to be together. Two broken people who'd found each other in the rain and learned that sometimes the best way to heal was to let someone see all your scars and love you anyway.